Hey, welcome to Film versus Movie, the podcast where we debate the cinema you hate. I'm your co-host, Belton DeLaine-Facey.
And my name's Chris Shurr.
And on this podcast, we watch the films that have been slandered, desecrated, and sent to their shitty home planet by public opinion. And one of us tells you why it's actually pretty good.
And the other one's going to tell you why it's a steaming pile of shit.
And today, we are discussing this year's summer box office bust, Borderlands. Yeah, it's like every summer season, all these Hollywood analysts talk about winners and losers. This was just the biggest loser in like every measurable way.
It was a loser because it wasn't even a loser in an interesting kind of way that people rallied. Like Morbius was the winner of losers. So much so they tried to bring it back, but Borderlands, everyone's just like, get it out of theaters. This is dog shit.
Yeah, because usually when something like this bombs this hard, they're usually like build up to the bomb. Like with Morbius, we had stories of like how ridiculous Jared Leto was on set. People made fun of the trailers. This seemed to have just showed up. Everyone made fun of it, and then it left.
I think that they knew the quality of the film and they just tried to sneak it in to get as much money as possible without any criticism. Like 15 million on a $35 million budget is a lot better than zero. So they're like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to advertise this movie at all. We're just going to tell people it's in theaters. They're going to say it sucks. We'll get like 15 million worth of people. And then we're just going to take it out and never bring it up again. Yeah,
it's funny because it seems like their marketing strategy is what I joke to friends that the marketing strategy for Avengers Endgame should have been. Because I was just like, they don't need to release a trailer. They just need like a 5-second TV spot with an Avengers logo and a date, and people will still show up. And like that's still possibly the only movie in history that could have done that. Outside maybe the last Harry Potter movie.
Star Wars movies, like the Phantom Menace, you could have probably pulled that off.
Oh yeah, true.
Everyone was hyped for that. Probably also a new what was the 7th one of The Force Awakens?
Yeah.
Probably not Jurassic World.
No.
You know what? It would probably still work.
I mean, at this point, Jurassic World seems like a franchise where it's like no one's quite sure who's keeping it alive, but it's still rolling.
What made so much money?
Yeah,
it's like they're inherently bad, but they also everyone goes and sees it. I think it's because kids like dinosaurs, and it's also like enough of a movie where you're like, okay, that could be interesting as an adult. But
okay, so Borderlands is based on the video game series of the same name. It's focused on a ragtag team in desolate space. So on to the plot. We open on a mercenary soldier named Roland who goes rogue and kidnaps Tiny Tina with the help of an institutionalized prisoner named Krieg. Like, why he's locked up is unclear, but he just decides to help him, and he breaks out the glass enclosure pretty easily.
Yeah, it wasn't very hard. That's not even, I'll get into the criticism later.
Well, it turns out Tina's father is Atlas, a corporate billionaire, and he hires a bounty hunter named Lilith to rescue her, which requires Lilith to return to her home planet of Pandora. And when she's arrived, she's joined by Claptrap, who's a robot that's programmed to wait for her return and assist her. And they find Tina, realize she doesn't want to go back. So Lilith joins Roland and Krieg when Atlas's army attacks. They escape and inform little Tina was genetically engineered to open this ancient vault on Pandora. It was kept by this race of people called the Iridians, and had their like big weapon or something in there.
Okay, it's just gonna get into criticism. That's like kind of the issue with turning this game into a movie is everything's a MacGuffin. It's essentially like it's a fetch quest first person shooter. There isn't much of a story. You go from one character and they're like, hey, I need you to go pick up this gun. And then you drive and you shoot people and you pick up the gun and you bring it back to him. And he's like, have this XP. And then he's like, all right, enough of horsing around. I need you to go talk to this woman. And so you get in the car and you drive to the woman and she's like, I need you to find a gun.
Yeah, I will say so. So just so everyone listening is aware, Chris has played the games. I have not, but even watching the movie, it did feel video gamey. Like even with some of the set pieces, you can kind of pick out like, okay, someone's gonna jump off of that, and
but like that's yeah. So when you ask what the Iridians are like, there's not that much to them. In the end of spoilers, at the end of Borderlands 1, you go to open the vault. And there's a monster that's going to eat the universe. So you have to kill the monster and put it back in the vault. That's all you get of the Iridians.
Okay.
You get like a weird needler type gun too. And that's about it.
All right. Well, so back to the plot. So first they have to find Lilith's estranged foster mother. And that's how they get the first key. And Atlas... sends Lilith a message that he still wants Tina back. Tina overhears, thinking Lilith betrayed her. She throws a grenade at her and leaves. When Lilith regains consciousness, Claptrap plays a message for her from her mother. We, the audience, do not see the whole message, but the rest of the team find the vault and are ambushed by Atlas and his army. Tina's unable to open the vault. Lilith flies in and explains she can do it because she's an Iridian known as the Firehawk. Atlas threatens to kill Tina if she doesn't open the vault. Big fight scene ensues. Lilith opens the vault but traps Atlas inside with the monster Chris mentioned, and then everyone lives happily ever after.
Yeah. I forget what happens at the end of Borderlands 2, which I think this story is more centered around. So this might be the ending of Borderlands 2. I just haven't played it since I was like 15.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this movie kind of encapsulated a lot of why there was that era we kept getting bad video game adaptation movies. And the thing is, with video games, they can get away with like not building the world or character as much, simply because it's a lot more interactive. So like when you're playing as a character, for example, in the movie, it's never explained why Lilith needs the money that this job would bring her. She just takes it, as opposed to if you're playing a game, everyone has their own personal reasons for needing money. So like that's relatable enough. You can self-insert your own characteristics into the character.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all right, we'll get into it.
All right. So yeah, as mentioned before, this is based on a video game series, the first of which came out in 2009, and the games were very popular. Had 3 sequels total. I believe a spinoff called like Tina's World, something like that.
Yeah, they're also coming out with a 4th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So according to the then CEO of Gearbox Software, which developed the games, Randy Pitchford, he already started talking about trying to get a movie made as early as 2011. Development was officially announced in 2015, and he started hiring writers in 2016. And now it's important to note this script got passed around a lot, and at least 10 writers were reportedly hired at some point to work on the script. And so one of them was actually Craig Mazin, who wrote the Last of Us series for HBO. And but then he was asked to have his name off the credits. Well, no, he asked to have his name off the credits at some point. And when that happened, people also noticed a mysterious writer no one's heard of named Joe Crombie was on the credits. So people were alleging that it was secretly Craig Mazin, and he had to keep denying it. It's almost like a messed up Hannah Montana Miley situation. It went as far as someone made a parody Twitter account under the name Joe Crombie that just made fun of the Borderlands movie coming out.
Yeah. It's never good when one of your writers is like, hey, I don't want my name attached to this after they worked on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's funny cause it's like, that happens sometimes, but you can really only do that if you're an established writer. So I like the idea that Craig Mazin, he started working on the Last of Us as soon as it come out. It's like, I only want to be known for good video game adaptations. A lot of people, when the movie came out, they noticed it was a pretty stat cast. Lilith was played by Cate Blanchett. Kevin Hart played Roland. Other cast members include Jamie Lee Curtis, Jack Black, and Ariana Greenblatt, who many people recognize from Barbie last year. So people are wondering, like, oh, how did they get this cast? The answer was they did this during COVID. The cast was hired on between May 2020 and April 2021, when a lot of people in the industry just did not have jobs coming up. I feel like if you have the money for a project, that was the way to do it. If you have enough money, A-list actors were like looking at sports draft prospects. You could just pick anyone.
Yeah, it's too bad they shove this movie through and not something like truly unique that wouldn't be able to get made without the pandemic happening.
Yeah. I mean, it's all like, it feels like they focus on big names, because I mean, Cate Blanchett's character in the games is in her early 20s, so it's really weird to get an actress in her 50s to play the role.
Yeah, also it just like didn't make that much sense. Like, it just they had to have been able to get someone younger. I know Cate Blanchett is like a huge name, but it just, like, get a 30-year-old. Yeah. Someone who I'm watching and I'm like, okay, it seems like you have a flair for acting in this kind of movie. Cate Blanchett just seemed like she didn't give a crap and kind of felt like she was above it.
Yeah. I mean, Cate Blanchett, in an interview with Empire, when asked about taking the role, she said COVID definitely had a role played in it. She said she liked the gunslinging and liked that it was different from anything she's done so far, but also admitted, like, maybe I was spending too much time in my garden. But yeah, you think like, oh, if you could get anyone, it's like there are plenty of actresses out there in like their early to mid 20s you could have picked up. Like, you think Zendaya got a call for this?
I don't know. I just think one of the most wild choices is having Jack Black and then have him play a character that has no Jack Black in it.
Yeah, because with Claptrap, they edited his voice to the point it is unrecognizable.
Like, if you had hired Eugene Merman to play Claptrap and that's how it came out, I'd be like, all right, that makes sense. But if you're shelling out for Jack Black, this just seems kind of like, I don't know, have him go like do like have him, I don't know, have him pantomime sing or something, you know? Yeah,
because also considering he only voiced Claptrap since it's a robot, and the thing is, Claptrap doesn't have a mouth, so you can easily put any audio over him. Just let Jack Black go wild. It's watching a movie, it seemed like they just added his audio in afterward for a lot of it anyway.
I am just imagining Jack Black getting into character, being like, I am going to do such a true read of this character. He's like, I know Claptrap. I'm going to be just Claptrap. Like, no Jack Black involved.
Oh yeah, because also one thing that makes Jack Black so entertaining as a voice actor is his enthusiasm. Like, if you've seen video of him doing the voice work for Kung Fu Panda movies, he really gets into it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just so heavily filtered. Like,
yeah, and it's like I also think the casting brings into question who was this movie for, because you think the typical audience of the Borderlands games doesn't watch the typical Cate Blanchett movie.
Yeah, maybe like who played Elektra in Daredevil?
Oh, Jennifer Gardner.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'd say Jennifer Gardner, but she actually might be the same as Cate Blanchett.
I mean, with Cate Blanchett, I just can't imagine like someone on Twitch playing Borderlands and they stop and it's like, oh my god, they got Tar to play. I feel like I'm pronouncing that wrong. They gotta specify Tar with an accent. Yeah, I do feel like a lot of people who play Borderlands would also be excited about Jack Black, though. And
yeah, Jack Black kicks it. I don't know who played Krieg.
Krieg, gotta look this up. Krieg was played by Florian Montanou.
Okay, here's the other thing that I want to throw by you. So when you were picking your character, there's 4 characters. There's Roland, I'm blanking on one of the guys' names, but he's like a big buff dude. So that's basically Krieg. Then you have Cate Blanchett's character, Lilith. And then you have this dude named Mordecai who just fights people with a hawk. I think that would have been so much cooler. They could have made such an interesting movie about just a dude running around with a pet hawk. Trying to get to the bottom of situations.
Yeah, I feel like if they had like the Hawk and Claptrap, that would have been like sidekick overload.
Like get Keanu Reeves. If you're getting any fucking name, you could get Keanu Reeves to play Mordecai with the Hawk.
Yeah, and for those wondering if you've seen Florian Montanou before, he played Victor Drago in Creed 2 and 3, as well as Razor Fist in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
I don't remember Razor Fist.
He was a guy who was missing a hand and was replaced with a literal razor.
Oh, yeah, I still don't really remember him.
All right. Well, the film was directed by Eli Roth, who mainly does horror movies. He has worked with Jack Black and Cate Blanchett before on the film The House with a Clock in Its Walls. And the film, they filmed this between April and June 2021, with reshoots being done in early 2023. However, Roth was not available for reshoots because he was working on his film Thanksgiving. So the reshoots were directed by Tim Miller, who helmed the first Deadpool movie. And so one thing about the games, they are rated mature. So a lot of people kind of question why this movie was PG-13. Apparently, it was originally written and filmed to be rated R. Some of the writers have commented they wrote an R-rated movie, and stunt coordinator Jimmy O.D. did confirm like there were a lot more graphic stunts, people being cut in half, heads blown off, all that were cut from the movie.
I don't think that would have made it any better.
I'm not sure it would have made it any better, but it does make it seem even more like this movie. At some point, it took so long in development that they kind of questioned if the audience for a Borderlands movie was still going to be there, so they just made some Hail Mary attempts to get people in seats, one of which is to make it PG-13 to be available to a wider audience.
Yeah, it's a little odd because everyone who played Borderlands 1 and 2 has aged out of PG-13 audiences. Like, I just can't imagine that there's a lot of 11-year-olds right now playing Borderlands.
Yeah, especially the game came out in 2009. So if you were 11 at the time, you're in your 20s.
Yeah, it's like a retro game now, which is, I fucking hate. I'm getting so old. I'm almost 30, Belton.
Yeah. Yeah, all right.
I remember when GoldenEye was out on the N64.
Oh my god. Yeah. All right. So this movie, it was originally supposed to come out in 2022. Then it got pushed back a bit. It finally released August 9th, 2024. On a budget of $115 million, it made a total of $32.7 million at the worldwide box office. The Rotten Tomatoes score, when the first wave of reviews came out, a lot of people made a big deal out of it because after one day it stood at a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. It is now up to a 10%, which on this podcast feels like a comeback.
Yeah, can you get a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes?
You can. There are films who have.
Who has a 0?
It's extremely hard. The only one that comes to mind is, I think, a Kirk Cameron movie called Saving Christmas.
Oh, okay.
Which the thing is, it sounds like a very Christian conservative movie. Yeah. And usually those get something because some movie critics are Christian conservative, but I can't imagine how bad it has to be for most people to be like, this is Christian conservative propaganda. And then Christian conservatives are like, this is bad Christian conservative propaganda.
They're like very pro Jesus, but like, aren't we getting a little too pro Jesus nowadays? Yeah. Like, Jesus, if we're putting movies like this out, it's too much.
Yeah, it's like at some point it's like, this is bad for the cause.
You're like, okay, wow, my religion's been commercialized. Okay.
All right, and so Borderlands also currently stands at a 4.5 out of 10 on IMDb, which, like, surprisingly not the worst on the podcast.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now it's time for our opening statements. I will be defending this movie.
And I will be attacking. You want me to start?
Yes.
I went a little long on this opening statement. It's more, okay. Borderlands is a film that everyone should have seen coming. Its issues go beyond the stale writing, mediocre action sequences, and apathetic acting performances. The issue is this garbage movie should have never been made. They took a fetch quest first-person shooter and tried to make it something it's not, a good story. Fallout and The Last of Us flourish with deep lore and a strong narrative voice that can be emulated. Borderlands' whole thing is that it's a shallow shoot-'em-up that uses foul language. That's it. That's the whole pitch. It's bonkers that they even allowed this to get made, and its shallowness is reflected in the fact that the whole reason people bought the game is because they played that one Cage the Elephant song in the advertisement. I remember as a kid, it just every commercial break, you'd get the like, ain't no rest for the wicked. And then have the narrative voice and be like, are you a bitch? Are you a dumb fucking bitch? The fucking play this game and you're a strong man. I don't know what to, it just sucks. The game's not terrible to play, but it's not like it's not a story-driven game. Yeah. Okay. Before I get to my statement, I will say I remember that trailer because I actually started listening to that song before the trailer came out. So it's like when talking about, I must have sounded like a pretentious douchebag when people are like, "Oh yeah, that's the song from the Borderlands game," and I didn't play video games, so I was just like, I don't even know what Borderlands is. Okay, I forgot to check. Do they even have that song in the game? I've never played the game. Or I mean, in the movie? No, I don't think they do. That's where they fucked up. If they had the song, it would have been a little bit better. It would have they missed all the nostalgia points. Sorry, I'm getting into your opening statement. All right. So my opening statement.
Imagine a movie with a ragtag team on a journey through space where they become family, great action, and a moving story that sets up a larger world. Now get Guardians of the Galaxy out of your head and get ready for Borderlands. It brings back all the elements from the game you hopefully love and introduces them in a brand new way.
That's very generous.
Okay, so one thing about like this video game adaptation, as I said before, like a lot of issues like video game to movie adaptations have is like a lot of video games inherently have like less character and world building development. I will say it does feel like they started to use the game as more of a sandbox and actual story to adapt from. It feels like a lot of changes after that were just business decisions. That's like, okay, we have to appeal to a market. We have to figure out the market so there. And so everything just got diluted down from there.
Yeah, that's fair. But like, I think the issue is that the starting point, none of it really made any sense. You had to approach it from some point of view, and you're like, all right, well, let's dilute it for business sense or for business based decisions. It's just kind of like, it's just bad. It's like, sorry, I'm a little sick.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, I do think someone could be given a world like Borderlands and just create an interesting story out of it. But I mean, when you go through 10 plus writers, that's generally a sign that the studio doesn't truly know what they want. Because like any one of those 10 writers probably had a really good story, and now there's just like crumbs of that in the movie.
I don't know. I kind of picture it like 10 people started writing this and they're like, oh God, this is really nothing to work with. And they all just were like, all right, I'll just quit. Fuck this. And so they quit. And then the studio has to go to another writer. And the writer's like, what happened to the last guy? He quit because the source material isn't great for making a movie. Oh, okay. And so then they pass it along. And they just keep passing the buck until one guy's like, all right, I'll write it, but like, don't put my name on it.
I mean, if we're going to believe Craig Mazin, then there is one guy who has so little work the internet doesn't think he exists. He definitely wanted to work on it as long as possible, at least keep collecting the paycheck. But like, this is a common thing where it's like a writer's working on something for so long and the studio's like, we want something different. We no longer feel you're the person for that, and just let them go, bring on someone else.
Well, they should have gone to 11. They should have gone to 11 because what they ended up with was bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a matter of like, at some point you have to make this movie, and with the pandemic they decided to like strike while the iron was hot, so to speak.
Okay, you remember the whole, what was the Looney Tunes versus Acme what was the movie that they just threw it all in the garbage and used it as a tax write-off?
Oh, so Wile E. Coyote movie?
Yeah. They could have done that with this movie. They could have just used it as a tax write-off and considered it a total loss, and everyone would have been better for it.
Oh, okay. Here's the thing. I don't think saying those movies as tax write-offs are beneficial to anyone except like the heads of studios, and we are anti-capitalist here. Like, if I would argue, if anything, is better to release a completed work of art into a world and it be bad than to not release it at all.
Look, I don't disagree with you on a personal level, but I'm just arguing with on the sake that you're like, look, this movie was bad because they made a bunch of business decisions, but I'm arguing that even the business decisions were bad. This should have just been a total loss. Like, from a business point of view, the tax write-off would have been worth more than the box office. And no one would have had to have this staining their record.
Okay. My only counter argument to that is if they had not released this movie, they might have owed Cate Blanchett and Kevin Hart a lot of money. That's the only thing I can think of.
Is that how it works?
I wouldn't be surprised if they have like something in their contract, because a lot of big stars, they'll have something where it's like they get a certain like percentage points of box office revenue. So if you cancel a movie, that messes with their money and they might be able to sue you.
Look, okay, I might be stretching a little bit, but I feel like if the head of the studio had gotten Cate Blanchett on the phone and just been like, hey, we haven't made any decisions yet, but we're thinking of just throwing in the garbage, but we're worried about paying you a bunch. Could we just like negotiate a little bit? She'd be like, oh yeah, this is a worthwhile endeavor for this not to come out. I'd pay money for this movie not to see the light of day.
For this to not come out and miss her one chance to attend the Razzie Awards. That's the thing. I anticipate this movie is gonna get a bunch of Razzie nominations, if only because this is their one shot to get Cate Blanchett. Like, what was her worst movie before this? Ocean's 8? That's not Razzie's bad.
Yeah, it wasn't Razzie's bad. It was just like, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Going back into the movie. I think another issue with the movie is that all of the characters in the video games are just classes. Like in the sense that Roland, Lilith, and I'm going to count Krieg, even though technically he's not. That's like the only difference between them is the skin that they wear in the game and then what kind of like powers they have. There's no stretching backstory to differentiate them. Like the people you talk to in game don't even change their dialogue. It's really, they're trying to create characters based off of like different powers essentially, but there's no real character.
Okay, well, I would say from that the movie's an improvement. There's at least like some semblance of a character dynamic between them.
No, I this is what I mean. Going back to my point, it just shouldn't have been made because like they didn't do a good job doing it either. They go into like some quasi land where they're essentially like very shallow characters, and you're like, oh, okay, so you just added like one sentence of backstory to this player class. It doesn't really work. I don't think it would work for any game that functions like this. I think you need a little bit more. Because you could replace the word Roland with soldier. He's the soldier class. Lilith is the phase walker class. That's kind of the issue. They're not characters. I
feel like they all have stuff there. It could have been presented differently. Like if we, like with Lilith in particular, like just small tweaks. Like if they gave her a reason to need that money, or if we had a better idea, a more clear idea of why she hated going back to Pandora so much.
Bellin, I think you fell asleep. They actually spelled out why she hated going back to Pandora.
Okay, I mean, look, I know they spelled out. I mean, like if they brought that up earlier. Also, I did see this in theaters. I was one of the like 5 people who did.
Yeah, you just fell asleep when we were watching it.
Not because it was boring. I was just tired.
No, you fell asleep because it was boring. But yeah, going back that, yeah, that's the other thing. I don't think they had much of a group. I think the group dynamic between the 4 of them was just flat because in the game, a group is, you're not like teammates even. You're just joining a group party to play together, essentially. There's no point where your characters play off each other. And I just think that's like a bad place to adapt from a movie. Because if you take something like League of Legends, where it's like each of those characters have pretty like, they're specific characters. They've got names, they've got backstory and plot. Even though they play kind of like, when you're actually playing the game, they don't matter that much. They're really well thought out versus these are just like, they throw them out by the second game.
I want to. I mean, I was gonna say something about like retconning backstory. Then I lost my train of thought.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I mean, it's It's, with the group, group is like, it's like they aside from Creed, they at least have individual reasons for being there. It's not a matter of like completely just being thrown at each other and being like, all right, you're a team now.
Okay, why did Roland take Tina out of the prison?
Because he knew Atlas was evil, and he knew Atlas was going to use her to like bring out some super weapon and doom the universe.
Did he say that?
He mentioned it.
Oh, okay, I forgot that part. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think even with Roland, I feel like all the elements of a typical Kevin Hart character was there, because typically with Kevin Hart character, it's like you just have him play somebody who feels he has a bunch of authority and like undermine him a bit, and I feel like other characters like Lilith and Claptrap were supposed to be doing the undermining, but Lilith didn't really do that, and Claptrap just they changed his character too much throughout. They couldn't decide on what he was supposed to be.
Yeah, in the game he just like kind of chills in one spot. Like he carries you to the introduction location and then boom, never leaves it. Every once in a while he comes on the radio and is like, hey, there's some stuff going on here.
Oh, so they actually found more uses for Claptrap in the movie.
Yeah, like that's kind of I think that's the issue with this movie is they had to invent all the stuff to create a movie, and they dropped the ball in like a very serious way. Also, it really seems like they used AI to write some of Lilith's writing. Like if you told me that at one point a writer asked for catchy like punchlines for a badass female protagonist to say, and then he just like took 9 of them and copy and pasted them into the script, I would believe you.
Okay, I know I'm already doing a bad job defending this movie, so I'm gonna say this. So the thing is, I know like a lot of times while writing, it's like sometimes you just need to like write to get it done and revise it later. So sometimes you're writing, it's like, oh, I know I need a good line here, but I can't come up with it right now. So let me just put in something as a placeholder, and then I'll revise it. At some point between like all those drafts and different writers, it feels like some of them may have just turned in their draft too early, and it's like, oh, that somehow made it all the way to the movie.
Yeah,
because it was like that was with Lil's character is like Tina. A lot of her lines were like generic, annoying kid stuff. A lot of it just felt like video game cutscenes.
Well, that's the thing. In the video game, those lines make perfect sense. Like they work, because basically in the game, what ends up happening is you drive up to a character. When you get within range of her, sometimes it'll flash to a cutscene and it'll be like, I'm Tina! And then it'll just like cut to the screen where you find 3 missions. This is like what I'm trying to make the point of. They didn't build the characters at all. It just shouldn't have been made. It was really bad. You kind of hit the nail on the head. Tina in the entire game of Borderlands 2 probably has like 10 sentences of dialogue. And so they just made a theme of those 10 sentences and then just tried to shoehorn her personality whenever she had to talk. And it worked a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, considering Eli Roth, who directed, supposedly like last worked on the script. Actually, no, because someone else like did some edits for a reshoot. But it does feel like if you were to ask him his thoughts on children, he'd just be like, they're annoying and gross, and that's what he put into Tina.
Yeah. They also didn't get into like, I think they missed out. So like one of the things about Borderlands is they have a convention for naming their enemies, and it's always really silly. So like the basic enemy will be called like a psycho, and then the more extreme version of that will be called a badass psycho, and then the highest level of it will be called the ultimate badass psycho. This is what I'm talking. This is the game. It's just childish, foul-mouthed humor. But like they didn't even include that. They could have like had this whole scene where, remember the scene where they keep harping on, they're like, these aren't just raiders, they're like the Chemboy gang. But they could have given them a really stupid name and kind of stuck with the narrative of the script or the game, but they didn't. They're just like, oh, this is a very generic gang name, when they should have been called like Big Slut Chemical Boys or something.
Honestly, Big Slut Chemical Boys does sound like a bar in Bushwick. But yeah, like honestly, it feels like the route for his movie should have been just to lean into the ridiculousness of the games, like make it maybe something like Deadpool where it's self-referential.
That could have worked. You could have had it be like a lot. I think part of the other issue is the whole game that is being sold. Like these aren't heroes. They're vault hunters. They're treasure hunters. But then the movie kind of sells them as heroes. They follow like all the kind of same structure as heroes and ultimately end up saving the day. I just feel like it could have been a little more chaotic.
Yeah. It does feel like that. Like it does feel like they were trying to imitate Guardians of the Galaxy when it was built more for like a classic, say, Suicide Squad story.
Could have been like Mad Max-esque. But instead, you get Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
It's set in like a mining town.
Yeah. All right. You ready for concessions?
Yep.
All right, now it's time for concessions. This is where I give 3 things I didn't like about the film, and Chris gives 3 things she liked. My first thing, it does feel like they missed every opportunity for meaningful character development and dynamics. Because like, especially the introductory scenes, it was small things they could have added that could just add more character. Like they could have made it so that Roland, Tina, and Krieg actually knew each other before that scene started. They could just add a little bit about Lilith, about on why she takes a job, why she needs the money, and just like the scenes throughout, like between Lilith and Tina, it seemed like they were going for their version of like the old person younger kid dynamic you see in The Last of Us and Logan, but she never there's nothing that really draws them closer to each other.
Yeah.
Like if anything, it does feel like Lilith is just tolerating Tina at times until she decides it's like, you know what, I guess you're not a total asshole.
Yeah, I mean, they had a lot of opportunity to kind of draw the parallels between her being abandoned by her mom and Tina not having a mom. But even that, they still kind of missed. It was like right there to have Lilith kind of reflect on her life and then become closer to Tina. But they just kind of had her be like, all right, well, here's a kid. I guess I'll befriend her.
Yeah, because again, in that scene, they just need to have Lilith say something about like, you know, here's the thing about parents, they're overrated. Like mine sent me off into space, just something like that.
Yeah. All All right, so the big thing of Borderlands is they have like a million different guns, like all. Basically, they just have a million different like attributes, and then they use a random generator to put together a gun. So when you play the game, you go through like it's like 75 levels, so you go through like thousands of guns. Mm-hmm. They just stuck with the same 4 guns the entire time, and like when they would do close-ups on the guns, I think Lilith had the pistol that when you shot, the barrels rotated. So the entire gun was like rotating as she shot fast. That was pretty cool. Like, I'll admit the gun animations were cool. I just like, they should have gotten more of it.
Yeah. Cause I feel like that's like a small detail that they added where they could make it like a bigger part. Cause actually my next point was that they don't utilize like the technology and space aspect that, as much, because like with the guns, I think it could have been cool if just throughout the movie they it could have been a thing where it's like they don't have real guns, they have like a generic thing that they keep having to like reassemble and use different parts for, and I think that that could have added like a specific challenge, but it does feel like overall like the only real space cool space technology they have is when Atlas hires Lily, and he has a thing where it's like the henchman where he's collars that projects his face onto their face so he can like talk to them and be a body. I thought like that was something interesting. They use it once, but after that, all the technology feels like this is just generic space stuff, like flying cycles, force fields. Like it's all stuff that's been seen before.
Yeah, that's how the game is. They did the atmosphere right. Like looking at it, I'm like, okay, it kind of matches that part of the game. The buildings are like run down. Nothing really looks like you could live there other than like the really big main settlement they go to. So I think they kind of got that right. They got the whole vibe of the weird barren outpost planet.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something where it's like, they make it seem like it could have been an interesting world to really explore. They just don't explore it as much. I mean, when Lilith first arrives on Pandora, they just go through a quick sequence where you see all these different places, but you don't spend time at them and get to know anyone there.
Yeah, that's kind of how the game works. That's the issue. Like, that's how it works in the game. You literally go through, you talk to someone, he gives you 5 missions, and either you complete those missions and unlock a new area, or you go back to him and then he gives you 5 more missions.
Yeah, I mean, again, watching a movie, that was something where it's like, I just assume, okay, these are places that you get to play in the game, and for a game that makes sense that you show up one place, do your quest, and then leave. And well, I feel like for a movie, we actually need to see the characters do something.
Yeah.
All right. My final concession. The action just wasn't that good. Which honestly, if the action was great, I think I could have forgiven all the other aspects and enjoyed the movie. But the action just nothing interesting. Some of the scenes you couldn't like really follow along, and then like there's the opening scene when Roland's taking Tina out. It's like you just have a hallway you need to get from A to B, but the camera just cuts and moves so much you lose track of where A and B are.
Yeah. I think they got the look of the characters fairly right. Like Krieg looks like a psycho, other than the fact that Cate Blanchett is 50 when the character's supposed to be 20. Tiny Tina looks about right. Roland looks about right. They got the costumes down decently.
Yeah, because I mean, I have seen like some of the clips from the game. It's like the game just has such an interesting art style that feels like it would be hard to capture in live action.
Oh yeah, I think they did all right. It was hard to write concessions.
Yeah. Again, this is a live action movie that probably would have been better off animated.
Yeah, I think you could probably put together a really solid 8-episode animated series about Borderlands. But yeah, not a live action movie. All right, let's finish this bad boy off.
All right. Closing statements. I'll go first. There's no denying we've gotten better video game adaptations, but Borderlands stands proudly as a sandbox for what could have been. It has all the elements for a world that could hold a franchise, but lean too much into familiar tropes. Ultimately, it stands as a testament for what can happen when there are too many cooks in the kitchen.
Borderlands is a fairly true to spirit adaptation, but that doesn't make it good. The game is shallow and the movie is shallow. The movie was made without much care or thought. It's the paper you throw together 30 minutes before the deadline with the title, insert title here. Although admittedly, it brought me back to the game, so I guess they got what they wanted. I went and bought the Xbox One version of Borderlands, and I've been playing it for the past 5 days. So like it succeeded. Like it didn't have to be a great movie, I guess. It just needed to get people to go buy things and get them to remember Borderlands before the 4th one comes out.
Oh yeah, I guess like in terms of cross promotion, that works. Like, although with this movie getting so bad reception, I wonder if the 4th Borderlands game is going to come out and people are just going to have a bad taste in their mouth about it.
Well, the issue is that Borderlands 3 came out, and I never played it, but I'm pretty sure it was really bad. And then they came out with the Borderlands, the prequel, and that was also really bad. And so they're just like, I wouldn't be surprised if Borderlands 4 got canceled. I don't know. I think this franchise, it could die. Like, I'm fine with that. They had 2 really good games. They made a lot of money, but they're just going to keep trying to milk it.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's like a lot of movie franchises where it's just like, all right, this should have ended a while ago, but it's still making money, and the studios don't want to create more things.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of Film versus Movie. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.